Welcome to the Seahawks Squad Show. I'm Anderson Hurst. That is a shutout for the first time since 2015. Was this good defense or was this a very bad offense? Find out.
I'm Chris Crawford, and I am extremely thankful this Thanksgiving weekend to the Carolina Panthers.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Turbo Robert Turbin, and I'm still full from Thanksgiving, but feeling good.
And my name's Rob Rang, and I'm going to talk to you about why the Seattle Seahawks had arguably the most impressive performance of the season, even with Jackson Smith-Njigga only catching 2 passes.
Hey 12, it's the Seahawks Squad. Everything Seattle Seahawks every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Emerald City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get loud, 12s. The Seahawks Squad Show starts now.
What up, 12s? We got your Seahawks Squad Show here on Locked On Seahawks. The Seahawks win this one 26-0 for their 9th win of the season. That's their first shutout since 2015. Just a very impressive defensive showing more than anything else for your Seattle Seahawks. The biggest question I have is whether this was just an elite defensive showing or how much of this could be told by the fact that they were facing an undrafted rookie free agent quarterback with a lot of injuries on the offense from Minnesota. So we're going to kind of dive into all that. How much can we attribute to each of those things? But first, I want to tell you guys that today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, before we get into all the nitty-gritty questions here, I just want your initial reactions. Chris Crawford, we'll start with you. Seahawks win 26-0, first shutout since 2015. They go to 9-3 on the season. What are we thinking?
It's a huge result, and it wasn't a ton of fun to watch. If you were a neutral party, I'm sure this was like a game that you were turning off real quick and finding what else was on. But it's a huge result for the Seattle Seahawks, and yes, they were certainly helped by the fact that Max Brosmer just wasn't up to this. This was just not going to be something that this Seattle defense was going to struggle with. That being said, there were a lot of quarterbacks that were going to struggle against the Seahawks today. I think, and there's a little bit of a spoiler result. The Seattle Seahawks defense played outstanding football today. This felt like a 2012 era win. And the fact that you told me this was 2015, 10 years since the last shutout. And shutouts are really hard. And by the way, shout out to the coaches who don't kick the field goal when they're down like 38-0, just so they get avoid shutting out, playing real big boy football. I always appreciate that compared to, we just got to get points on the board and take some momentum. No, you don't. Take your L, take your shutout, and go forward. This was a really impressive defensive effort. I wish I could say the same about the offense, but they did more than enough for the victory today. And it's awesome. You're in first place today because of the fact that tied for first place anyway, because of the fact that the Carolina Panthers took care of business in that victory. And now this is a huge, massive 5-game stretch for your Seattle Seahawks. First step done.
Turbo, how are we feeling after the win?
Feel good. You know, it feels real good to see the Seahawks playing like they are at home right now. Okay, they're playing dominant at home. You could feel the energy. It was electric, even through the screen, just watching the game. I mean, the intensity was there, and it was set. The tone was set by the defense. And historically, you know, it's kind of always been the Seahawks DNA, right? Set the tone by the defense. The crowd gets into it. The 12s get loud. They become a part of the game where they're disruptive. You know, the Vikings couldn't quite get going. And, you know, listen, obviously they had a young quarterback and everything like that. But, you know, our defense, the one thing that you could point to is that they've been consistent against, you know, pretty much everybody, you know, throughout the season. They've been making plays, getting into the backfield, making effort plays like D-Law, you know, on the forced fumble against Aaron Jones. You know, that's why I said some weeks back that he was a tone setter for this defense, because it's plays like that. And this is a guy who is probably closer to retirement, you know, than he is not. So that part of it was really impressive. And so it was exciting to see the Seahawks, you know, dominate the way that they did today.
All right, Rob, what's your initial reaction after the 26-0 victory?
Yeah, as I said in the opening there, I thought that this is one of Seattle's all-around best played football games. Yes, I know that it was frustrating to watch them play offense in the first half of that football game. But I think you have to tip your cap to defensive coordinator Brian Flores, Minnesota Vikings. Yeah. Obviously, we all know that Sam Darnold played last year with the Vikings. Everybody, the narrative was, oh, this is Sam Darnold's opportunity for a revenge game against the Minnesota Vikings. Well, what about the advantages that Brian Flores has as the defensive coordinator who's going up against Sam Darnold in practice every single day? He knows the different things that are going to be challenging to Sam Darnold, and the fact that Brian Flores, not only here, but previously as head coach of the Miami Dolphins, he had proven himself to be one of the most aggressive and exotic blitzers in all of the NFL. So we know the way that Sam Darnold can struggle when he gets pressure in his face. And again, nobody knows that better than Flores does. And so I anticipated that this was going to be a little bit of a dogfight early on in the football game. It was going to be difficult for Seattle to avoid the type of turnovers that would give an undermanned Minnesota offense, opportunities. And so that's why I wasn't so concerned while Seattle was playing very conservatively, going for the long field goals and just really trying to tighten up things defensively and put an awful lot of pressure on the undrafted rookie free agent quarterback. Look, there's no question about it. You can see the limitations of their quarterback. He just doesn't have the accuracy in the intermediate areas to be able to throw the ball over the linebackers, under the safeties. That's one of the reasons why he got picked off as much as he did. But to have the confidence in Jason Myers go for a couple of different 50-yard kicks and for him to make them. And then and you guys talked about this a moment ago, like just the credit for the 12s and Mike McDonald when he got kind of booed for going, potentially going to go for another field goal. Instead, brings the team back out there, goes for it on fourth down, runs the ball emphatically down the stretch of this football game. Zach Charbonnet getting that touchdown. Then obviously the defense playing as well as they did. I just thought that this was one of those games where, look, on the heels of a game against the Tennessee Titans, where you have a rookie quarterback that looked like a future star against Seattle last week, to then be going up against another rookie quarterback this week, to Turbo's point at home, Turbo's point about this being a home game, and Anders, your point about this going back to the 2012 kind of era, like this felt like Seattle kind of flexing a little bit, like this is our opportunity now that the Los Angeles Rams have lost that game on the road. Let's just remind the NFL what a huge advantage can be to be playing at home. And Seattle obviously did that in great fashion today.
Yeah, and, as much as I would love to take Chris Crawford's amazing point about feeling like a 2012 era victory, I will cede credit to him because
we're the same person.
No,
we look the exact same.
No, it's all good.
Age,
no, but it obviously starts with the defense. And I think we've mentioned a couple times throughout this year that there have been wins where going into this year, kind of evaluating now versus before the season started, there have been a couple wins where I wouldn't have expected the Seahawks to win in that type of game script, whether it's kind of a high scoring offense bails your defense out a couple times. Sam Darnold with explosive plays, like that's kind of the reason you're winning ball games like it was earlier in the season. This is more the game script I expected Seahawks football to look like for the majority of 2025. And I think without saying anything else, like the fact that you can win both ways shows how, balanced and deep of a football team you are. And it wasn't a perfect game. I know it seems weird to say when you win 26-0 and it was another dominant victory. It wasn't without its flaws. The offense in the first half was a little bit of an eyesore. We can get to that. The offensive line, 75 still looks like a massive issue. I just can't not go there. But I'm going to start with the defense today because I know you're going up against max Brosmer, I think is his name. And the fact that I don't know his name kind of tells you exactly everything you need to know.
Sure.
I know that they have over half now of their offensive line is injured. I know they had their starting running backs and coming in and out of the game. I don't care. It's really, really, really hard to get a shutout in today's NFL.
Yeah.
And the amount of plays that the defense was making, it's like, I don't know. You don't see defenses look like it's that easy very, very often. It looks like they were 3 steps ahead of the offense. And this, again, I know where we are with the quarterback that they're playing against, but this is a really good head coach in Kevin O'Connell. He's gotten the most out of a lot of offenses over the years. They read a stat, like I think there's only been 2 head coaches that have more wins since the start of 2022 besides Kevin O'Connell. So he knows what he's doing on the offensive side of the ball. And to shut him out and to just absolutely dominate with zero feeling of ever feeling threatened is that's accomplishing to me. So I'll pose the question for our next segment, but it just feels like this defense is on its way to being the best in the NFL. So that's the question that I'm going to ask before we break here really quick, and we can kind of dive deep, super into it. Is this the best defense in the NFL? Because I think it's time to start having that conversation. I realize that probably the main threat to that being the case is the Houston Texans and what they did against a very good Indianapolis Colts offense today. But I still believe the playmaking ability of this Seahawks defense outdoes it, especially being able to go head-to-head with them. So I'm going to ask that question. We're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to get you guys' answers on the other side of this here. We call that a tease in the radio world. So we'll talk about that. Is the Seahawks defense the best in the NFL? And we'll kind of go over the big plays from today's game. Seahawks win this one 26-0 to go to 9-3 on the season, tied for first place in the NFC West. I think the Rams have that tiebreaker because of head-to-head, but they do play one more time, so that can easily go the other way. So, all right, we'll be right back. We'll talk about the defense here in the next segment, and we'll get to much more from this game as the Seahawks move to 9-3 on the season. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. This episode's brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. And if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. If you're someone who maybe doesn't like to get in the nitty-gritty of these over-unders and kind of money lines, and if you're not a super degenerate, but you want to get some juice on the action, PrizePicks is the perfect way to do that. All you got to do, pick a lineup of stats from players, pick more or less on any of those stats, and then you can win money based off of your picks. It's super, super easy. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Welcome back, Seahawks Squad Show. I got myself, Anderson Hurst, Chris Crawford, Rob Rang, and Robert Turbin with you guys today. Seahawks win 26-0. You heard that right, 0, to go to 9-3 on the season. I'm just going to pose the question. I'm going to leave the floor open to you guys. Is this the Seahawks defense, the best defense in the NFL? Chris Crawford.
I think it's the best defense in the NFC. I probably would go with the Texans right now as the best overall defense, but that is much more compliment, obviously, to the Houston Texans than insult to the Seattle Seahawks. And the way they played today, it's easy to make that argument. And there's some defenses that are up there too. Denver's defense is really good. Green Bay's defense, even though they gave up some yardage and points to the Detroit Lions on Turkey Day, certainly up there as well. But I just think the Seahawks defense, in terms of both the personnel they have and also the coaching they have on this defense, right now, I think it is the best in the NFC. And if you wanted to say best overall, I wouldn't argue with you too long.
All right, Turbo, what do you think? Best defense in the NFL?
It's a consideration, no doubt about it. They're a top 2 or 3, maybe 4 defense in the NFL right now. I don't think there's any doubt about that. If anybody argued that, they're probably just not watching the Seahawks and what they've been able to accomplish, this season. To put them at number 1, that'd be kind of tough, but there's a legitimate argument there. But this is one of the top defenses in the league. This is a defense that can not only take you to a Super Bowl, but can win you a Super Bowl. That's the caliber defense that the Seahawks have right now, and that's what makes them one of the best in the league in my eyes.
All right, Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's really well said by both Chris and by Turbo there. I mean, I would struggle to say that Seattle is the number 1 defense, and certainly statistically, they are not. I mean, they don't lead the NFL in rushing yards allowed. They don't lead the NFL in points allowed or most interceptions or most sacks. But as Turbo just said, I think this is a Super Bowl caliber defense. I think that it is a defense that is good enough to play against a good offense and tilt the field in their offense's favor. And I think that it's the best overall team when you consider special teams as well as the big play ability of their offense and the ability to run the football. I thought that, Greg Olsen during the play-by-play, on Fox was kind of commenting that it's not necessarily an explosive running game, but it is one that they are just going to continue to pound the ball. And I think that all goes hand in hand with the defense playing as well as it does. It gets a little bit more rest than some of the other defenses out there because Seattle is going to run the ball. And that at minimum, it's for a viewer watching on TV, they may not appreciate it's obviously 3 downs. And then if you don't get the first down, you've got to punt. But if those are 3 quick incompletions compared to 3 runs of 2 or 3 yards, there's still 40 seconds or so. That's those big 300+ pounders. Those 45 to a minute and a half, 45 seconds to a minute and a half kind of breaks are just give you a chance to let your heartbeat slow down at least a little bit. And I do think that plays a role. So again, I would struggle to say statistically that Seattle has a number 1 defense in the league. I think it might just be the most effective defense in the league. And isn't that the point? I don't care about the statistics. I care about the W's at the end of the day. And that's where I think that Seattle's defense is as critically important to their success as any team in the league.
Yeah, I just we went into this season kind of, once again, reevaluating where we are now versus where we were at the beginning of this year. I think a lot of people would say the biggest catalyst for the Seahawks' success would be the play of Sam Darnold. And I wouldn't disagree with you completely. I would say the biggest question I had whether this team was going to be, a Super Bowl contender would be if that defense, which through the second half of last season was the best defense in the NFL statistically for those last 8 games. If that was the real defense that we were getting and they could take another step on that and be a top 3 at worst defense in the NFL, that's the biggest thing that I think is kind of developing into what is turning this Seahawks team into one of the best teams in the NFL. And it's great that you're getting the quarterback play out of Sam Darnold that you are, although, not his best day today. We'll talk about that in the next segment here with the offense and how much of it was him versus the O-line and just not really needing to score very much, obviously. But it's this defense and the ability to carry a game. And no other team, as frustrated as I can be with Mike McDonald not going for it as often, we go for it the least out of anyone in the NFL. They read that statistic on the broadcast today, and I wasn't surprised when I heard that because there's been a lot of times where I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? But when he feels that way, it just seems like there's not a team in the NFL that has this much confidence in what their defense is going to do. And I get it. He's a defensive head coach. That's what it should be. But Chris, doesn't it doesn't it mean that you feel like you can win games solely with your defense, which is arguably what they did today as well?
Yeah, and maybe not always win the game, but always keep you in that chance to get the win, right?
Yeah.
Like always, you never feel like you're going to be out of it when you have a defense playing like this. And, in particular, Ernest Jones was just absolutely fantastic today. Maybe his best game as a Seattle Seahawk. And the fact that he did it while there's no way he's 100%. Like there's zero chance in Hades that this is the very best version of Ernest Jones. You would never know it watching him today. Knowing you have this type of defense, knowing that you have the sound scheme, knowing that you have the ability to make adjustments, that has not always been a Seattle Seahawks strength, I think. At times it has, but that has not always been the best for the defensive coordinators and for the defensive staff. I just feel so much confidence in this defense, knowing that, okay, maybe the offense hasn't figured things out, but the defense should do enough to keep you in the game and at least take the Rams game, right? The Rams game, they had no business being in that football game, but the defense did enough to keep you in the game. And then when you get an opponent like today, where you're facing a quarterback who has no business starting an NFL game, they're going to dominate, and it doesn't really matter what you do offensively.
Yeah.
And it gives you a chance to figure it out in the second half and put some style points on the board. And, if this was the college football playoff, they would have probably needed to score another couple of touchdowns to get the 6 or 7 seed right now. But the fact that you just feel so much more confident, right? Like, this is what a defense like this can do. It gives you that chance to figure things out offensively and ultimately get the W.
Yeah, I think Turbo, you can add on that too. The biggest thing for me that impresses me is the fact that it's not just games like today. Again, I point in my head how much of this would feel different if they just threw out the Tampa Bay game. Like, I feel like that one game kind of skewed a lot of stats that people would be looking at if they were looking at the best team in the NFL. But they do it against both, teams that you should dominate, and they dominate them, but also, good offenses that have put up points against other teams, and they keep you in that game. They can do it in both ways. So talked about how important that is, not just to beat the bad teams. Let's be honest, Minnesota is in that place right now, but put up good fights against the better offenses in the NFL as well.
Well, it is a big key because, that really determines whether or not you're elite in my eyes. The example that I like to use is NFC Championship game 2014, against the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, and all those weapons. We're not doing a damn thing on offense. I mean, we're not doing nothing. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, the Packers, I think they scored 13 points in that game.
Yep.
I mean, you still gave us a chance to recover an onside kick and win it at the end.
Yeah.
With all the fireworks that the Green Bay Packers have been doing all season. So that, I don't always like to bring up that era because I just don't, I think it's unfair to try to compare.
Sure.
But oftentimes, well, not often, sometimes I'll just use examples of the point that I'm trying to come across in terms of, when you play against elite offenses, really the key is keeping teams out of the end zone. And when you can do that, that is really the factor when you play against elite offenses that give you a chance to win games at the end. And so if the Seahawks, as they're continuing to get better this season, because each week it's like, damn, we find something and we see something on tape, we see something live during the game. It's like, well, that's better, even though it's already good. You can look at Jackson Smith and Jigba and look at some of his route running or his route concepts or his reads in the zone and be like, well, that didn't see that in week 2, So the fact that the team is still growing, I think, is a big factor here. But against elite offenses, that's when you want to see the Seahawks keep those teams out of the end zone. The yards are one thing. You drive the ball up and down the field. But if you can't score, that's when you become, okay, this is really in elite. That's Denver. Denver is one of those teams they just keep you out of the end zone. You can drive the ball down the field, they keep you out of the end zone. But to me, that's the big difference maker. And I think the Seahawks are right there. This defense is right there.
Yeah, Rob, what do you think the biggest development is, because I think we thought this secondary would be really good. And I know you have the dudes in the front seven, but I didn't expect them to be this effective getting to the quarterback. But where are you most impressed from today specifically, if you're to pinpoint kind of one area from the defense?
Well, Drake Thomas is an easy one to kind of, if we want to be that specific.
Okay.
I think that he was a player when the Las Vegas Raiders released him a couple of years ago and Seattle pounced all over him. I just was surprised that he was available. I just thought that obviously he had, questions about his size, but I just saw a guy with terrific instincts, and if put in the right system could be effective. You have to have the guys up front to protect him a little bit, but he just has uncanny instincts and closing speed. I think that his development has been a turning point for this defense, but we all saw what DeMarcus Lawrence did in this football game, and I think that for all the credit that John Schneider and his the pro scout staff, the guys who are evaluating the free agents available, for all the credit they get for signing Sam Darnold. I mean, the decision to bring in DeMarcus Lawrence, the decision to extend Ernest Jones this last offseason after making the trade for him in the first place. Same thing with Leonard Williams. I mean, these are all home run kind of moves. And then certainly the development of Nicky Manwari as well. So I think that it's kind of multifaceted thing here. And then kind of going back to the last point when we were talking before about just the consistency with which Seattle's defense is playing. To me, that's one of the most exciting things. I think they're, for so long as a follower of Seahawks football, I've watched the Seattle at times just kind of play up or down to its level of competition. And Mike McDonald's talked about this before, like, playing to the standard. And like this, the standard now for Seattle is to play dominant football, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And the reality is, even when they've lost, and again, they made the point during the Fox telecast, I mean, this team has lost 3 games by a total of 8 points. I mean, my goodness, they have played dominant defense, with the exception of that Tampa Bay game, which is the only game, of course, DeMarcus Lawrence wasn't on the field. And I do think that he plays that significant of a role for it. I just think that they're a tougher, meaner, nastier, not just physically, but mentally, kind of a squad with DeMarcus Lawrence on the field. And so that's why I feel pretty damn good about Seattle's chances at home or on the road against anybody in the league. And that, to me, is one of the most exciting things about Seahawks football in 2025.
Chris, what was your favorite turnover for the day? We have a lot to choose from. So,
I mean, I'll just do the 85-yard touchdown. I mean, that was just
that
was the one time where you kind of felt like, they're starting to maybe figure something out. Nope. And, those defensive scores, I think, Turbo, you can probably speak to it as well as anybody. When your defense scores points for you, it has to feel phenomenal, just phenomenal. And, they put them in such good positions today. But, man, Ernest Jones was just so good. And I'm glad, man, that's as good of a trade as the Seahawks have made. All due respect to Jerome Baker and whatever the heck I think it was the 4th round pick they gave up in that trade. That's as good of a trade as Schneider has made, man. Like the difference this defense went, the level up, and maybe some of it's coincidental because the defense was going to get better as they figured out this scheme more, but it's not that coincidental. Like the just complete level up when Ernest Jones has been on the football field and allowing, like, Drake Thomas, like you said, Rob, he's been phenomenal, but allowing him to play the spot that he's the most comfortable in, right? Like, he doesn't have to be the quarterback of this defense. He's the second off-ball linebacker, and it gives him the chance to make plays, knowing that a guy like Ernest Jones is going to be someone who puts him in the right position to make those plays as well. That 85-yard touchdown was just electric, and that felt like he's not as good as Bobby Wagner. Obvious point is obvious, right? But that felt like that type of 2012, 2013 B-Wags type of play. And it was just phenomenal to see on a Sunday in 12 years after that fact. Yeah, it was awesome.
All right, Turbo, looks like you're getting ready to go on TV. Any last thoughts before you say goodbye to the Seahawks Squad Show listeners?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Chris, you're absolutely right. When the defense scores a tutty, we love it because we don't got to do nothing. Okay, we just get to sit on the sideline, drink some more Gatorade, and eat some sunflower seeds. You know what I'm saying? So it feels good. Hey,
Yeah.
Seahawks are on the right track. All right. Looking forward to next week. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Turbo.
Turbo.
Appreciate you. Rob, I'm going to give you the floor here. You have any turnover? I know what my favorite turnover is, but maybe for a different reason. But of all the takeaways, I should say, the Seahawks commit or forced today, it seems like that was one area. While it wasn't a super area of need, but if you're going to be a dominant defense, that needs to be an area where you need to dominate in as well. And it feels like they maybe weren't as dominant in that area. Well, they got 5 of them today. So just point to one of your favorite plays there.
Yeah, I have to take the low-hanging fruit, as Chris just talked about a moment ago. I mean, you get that 85-yard touchdown. Yeah. The fact is that obviously Minnesota had just gotten the ball, and they're in the red zone already. This is that scary moment. Oh my goodness, are they going to be able to create some momentum for themselves here? And to see DeMarcus Lawrence make that play to basically force the Uncle Rico like little sidearm flip, from the Minnesota quarterback, and then to see Ernest Jones just get on his horse and sprint those 85 yards. To see Rick Woolen, it felt like it was Churchill Downs or something, the way that he came racing at the end. He knows he's the fastest guy on the field. He shows his effort there to make sure that nobody gets him, that they tackle Ernest Jones from behind. I just thought that was just beautiful defense, timely defense, and then a selfless hustle play by Rick Woolen as well. And then I mentioned Rick Woolen here, the interception that he had that showed off the receiver-like skills that he has, just to be able to pluck the ball the way he did. And then, of course, he thought that he was a receiver after the catch. I would have loved for him to go down rather than try to make something happen. But it was like, it's almost like I'm thinking about one of my, Mount Thomas students, which, by the way, go Thunderbirds on to the 3A state championship Friday night at Husky Stadium. But it's like asking me to choose my favorite students. I mean, when you're asking me to choose the favorite turnovers in this game, because I'm proud of each of them. I see such great play in every single one of them, whether it be Kobe Bryant's interception or the DeMarcus Lawrence. It just seems like every time now he's on the field in Seattle, he's going to make some type of big play. It was, again, we're here at Thanksgiving, a couple of days after. It was a feast of turnovers for the Seahawks defense, and all of them, frankly, were just, as finger looking good as they possibly could be.
I love that. I'm surprised neither of you brought this one up, because Mike McDonald did in his post game. I'm just going to quote him and then talk about the play. He said that DeMarcus Lawrence's forced fumble is probably my new favorite play of all time. This is Mike McDonald. I just saw this blur coming down and just attacked the ball. That was such a cool play. For him to come behind, I can't remember who the runner was for Minnesota, but it was just a textbook play, and a guy that was everywhere today in DeMarcus Lawrence. You could point to the 2 interceptions that Ernest Jones had, but it's weird that number 0 stood out every single play. He was unblockable today. And I get, again, they had some offensive line health issues, so you're probably going against a lot of backups, but man, he is so dominant. And it's been a while since the Seahawks have really had that guy at an edge rusher position, and to get that sort of production, you can have, he leads, I think he's 3rd or 4th in the league in pressures, but to get the production out of it, the playmaking ability from that position is so key in today's NFL. So I just wanted to shout him out. And Rob, I'm glad you put out the Rick Woolen interception, because that was probably the most Rick Woolen play of all time.
Exactly.
Makes it an insane play to make the interception. Then he's like, you could tell how excited he is. I'm running this back, as it's 26-0, and it ends up fumbling the ball back to Minnesota. But now that was a great play nonetheless, and they still ended up getting the shutout. So I think defensively, the thing that, as we kind of bring this full circle in this conversation, the reason I think this is the best defense in the NFL is the fact that there's 0 holes. You can point to the high-end pass rushing ability of someone like Will Anderson in Houston, the elite corner play in Denver with Pat Surtain, but the fact that this team has 0 holes in the defensive side of the ball, and it's not because they haven't had any injuries either. So you could throw that out of there. The depth and the fact that they have 0 holes tells a lot about how good this scheme is and how well coached they are. So that's going to be the biggest reason I think this is the best defense in the NFL. I hope they continue to prove that for the rest of the season because there's some big tests coming up against some good offenses. But that's how impressed I was today with the Seahawks defense. But we mentioned, stopping teams from going in the end zone. Actually, that was one of Turbo's big points. The offense had a little issue with that themselves today. With if not going for it on 4th down in their second to last drive, I want to say they would have been 0 for 6 in scoring touchdowns in the red zone. So that's going to be something that has been a thing for the past few weeks now. I want to talk to you guys about that. What kind of concern level do you have? Was this just same thing we talked about on the other side of the ball? Was this just a really good defense you were playing, or was this a bad offensive performance? Bad, just not as up to standards offensive performance from the Seahawks today. We'll talk about that, so much more. We'll get our unsung hero / villain. We'll do a little shout out to the Mariners postcast here, as we always like to do. We'll do that in our last segment. But we're talking offense next. I want to get the thoughts of Chris and Rob here on the Seahawks Squad Show. Once again, Seahawks win this one 26-0, go to 9-3 on the season. We will be right back. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. Not usually, it is the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. I am a huge soccer fan. I'm soccer first when it comes to my playing days. Played for Seattle University. It's been an absolute bucket list item for me to go to a World Cup game. And you best believe I'm going to be using Gametime to make sure I could get the best deal and just kind of Seattle's hosting some games. I'm going to try and get in on a couple of those. Gametime app is the best way to utilize, and they can get expensive knowing how big of an event it is. But you save the most money by using Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, make sure to download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. Gametime. Welcome back. Seahawks Squad Show. Anderson Hurst, Chris Crawford, Rob Rang with it. We had Turbo for the first segment and a half, but he has some bigger fish to fry in terms of going on TV because he's a much better looking guy than the three of us. So it's just how it goes. It's how it goes. He's the big time former player. Yeah, we'll take it. But
Sure.
I still got Chris and Rob with me today. I guess I'll have to make do with you guys. But let's talk a little bit about the offense. I know in a 26-0 game, it can feel like, you cruise into the finish line, no real speed bumps. It didn't seem like that, especially in the first half on the offensive side of the ball. Chris, I'm going to leave it open to you. What direction do you want to go with the offense? Were you impressed even with the low offensive scoring totals? Or do you see issues that you want to address? How would you evaluate the offensive performance today?
Like just the largest meh you could ever meh. I don't think that you could ever it wasn't abhorrent. Like you scored 19 points with your offense, 7 points coming from your defense or 6 points coming from your defense, however you want to do the extra point. Boy, this red zone offense just needs a lot of work. And in particular, once they get inside of the 10. And Rob, I'm curious as a guy who actually knows what he's talking about here.
Wow.
I just see some real spacing issues sometimes, particularly obviously on the passing plays, where there's just there's no separation, and I don't want to blame too much. I think it's more X's and O's than Billy's and Joe's in this situation. I'm not saying that the offensive players are completely without blame, but it just seems like there's no fooling. The defenses seem to be on everything that they run inside of the red zone. Now, in order to do that, you have to get inside of the red zone, and the offense did a pretty good job of that, particularly in the second half. The first quarter was frustrating. That 9-play, 27-yard drive in the first quarter was just – that's a very disappointing end to that drive, right? Like you feel like you're kind of okay. You get the stop. You're going to go ahead, literally go ahead and put some points on the board. I thought Sam Darnold was okay. I thought the run game was better than okay. I think they probably should have run the football more today than they did, because I think there were some nice holes that were created. Yep. The right guard is a real problem. It's a real problem, and again, Brian Flores is a guy who can take advantage of those situations, right? Like he knows your weaknesses and he is going to attack. We talked about Overstorm Brave, the Madden play a couple of weeks ago. Brian Flores knows Overstorm Brave, and he is going to figure out the guy who is not brave on your defense. And unfortunately right now that's 75. And I don't mean that as a mental toughness thing. He's just not good enough. He is not a good enough football player for a Super Bowl caliber football team. It was really just a meh offensive performance, one that I think if you look at 26-0, but if you watched this game and didn't see any type of scoreboard, I think you might have thought more like 13-14-0.
Yeah. Well, and it really is the pick six that makes it not that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Rob, how would you evaluate the offense before we go in a direction I want to ask you guys about?
Yeah, I think obviously from a statistical standpoint, as disappointing as it gets, the word that comes to my mind is one that our censors may not love, but impotent. It was just it was not an offense that felt like it was going to be very effective against virtually any team in the NFL. Sam Darnold's numbers, the completion percentage is okay. 14 completions, 26 attempts, but only for 128 yards, not a single touchdown. 4 times he was sacked. And that's really where I think that this kind of comes back to Chris's point here before. I don't know that Seattle did a good enough job from a play calling standpoint, maybe a play design standpoint of helping out their Billies and their Joes, as you said. I thought that this was a case of where Brian Flores, defensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings, definitely kind of forced Seattle to be very, very patient. I don't think that's Sam Darnold's specialty. I think he wants to go over the top. I think that there is certainly some, the right guard position, Anthony Bradford specifically struggled. And then when he went down, Christian Haynes also struggled. Seattle did run the ball effectively, but they were far from dominant. In this game, I think they ran for 125 yards, I believe. So again, that sounds okay. But when you consider they ran 32 times to get those 125 yards, again, it's very slow. It's like watching paint dry. It's just a very slow process here. But, damn if it wasn't effective. And then that's ultimately what Mike McDonald cares about, is I think that he almost walks into these games, guys, like, you know what? They've got a really, really all galaxy wide receiver over there in Justin Jefferson. And if we just throw the ball to our guy, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and just light a fire under that guy's butt, then this could get into a little bit more of a shootout, even with their undrafted rookie quarterback. So rather than being kind of a rattlesnake mentality of just stinging them, let's just be the boa constrictor and just squeeze them slowly to death and ultimately win the damn game. And so I think Corbin and I often say this, and I apologize, you guys get some of this as well, but that, I think Mike McDonald basically feels like screw your fantasy football statistics.
Yeah.
He just wants to win the game. And so it's disappointing to see Sam Darnold, again, have 128 passing yards. If you got 4 points from your quarterback on one of these important fantasy football weekends, I get it. You're upset. This felt like a splash type of a game, and certainly a JSN or Justin Jefferson for that matter. But I also think that, again, that was very much the strategy. I think that the Seahawks took it from this game. And the fact that their leading pass catcher, not only in receptions and receiving yards, was A.J. Barner. I think, I think just that it was their mentality going into this game. And I think that they feel like, hey, this is not exactly the way they want it. Obviously, you don't want your quarterback going down 4 times. You don't want all those passes down because any of those passes got tipped, could have been an interception. But at the same time, I don't think that they are nearly as concerned as maybe the average fan might be, even with that victory. Which obviously, again, at 26-0, you feel pretty good about it. But I think if you just didn't look at the score, I think you could make an argument just watching the tape that this was a much closer game than that final score would indicate.
Totally. I'm gonna. It's weird because I'm normally someone who kind of gets on the offense a little bit heavier when they don't perform. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on this, that this was a bad offensive game, because I think I want to acknowledge the adjustments that were made after the first couple drives, because it looked like Sam Darnold wanted to push the ball down the field, kind of what he's done all year. Get it to JSN, make those big plays, running game, and then big plays. It is what the Seahawks offense is what made it so efficient and so explosive through this point in the season. And it bit them because Brian Flores is coming after them. We talked about right guard, having that not just be anyone blocking anything. That's going to hurt you sometimes too. But when you have to have longer developing routes like that, it's not going to work when you have a guy that's coming after you every single play. He said he would blitz him a bunch, and he did. And he gets the fumble. It wasn't very good in the first couple of drives. Then you saw a concerted effort, and I'm glad you brought up because I didn't think about this, Rob. The kind of you've seen multiple of these games where wide receivers from each team, even though they're not going up against each other, it's almost like a duel. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to out-duel you, right? Let's get it to my guy, and they just feel hot, like everything thrown their way, they're going to catch. It's almost like a chess match where it's like, yeah, I know that that's your one avenue of winning this game, getting Justin Jefferson to play at an all-world level. And I'm going to try and limit any sort of possibility of that happening, even if that means my all-world receiver not getting what he should be probably getting, and just limit any sort of reality to where that happens. So I love the kind of adjustments that they made offensively and be like, hey, let's take some quick hitters here. Let's throw it to A.J. Barner, 5, 6, 7 yards. The defense is shutting these guys down. We don't need any big plays. Just need to not turn the ball over, move the ball down the field. But the part where I do want to talk about and criticize is the red zone, because you got it into the red zone a bunch. And I love how Jason Myers has been pretty consistent, and he's been a great piece to this team and scoring a lot of points. But you cannot go what would have been 0 for 6 if you hadn't gone for it. And Mike Donald originally didn't, by the way. He threw out his kicker and then heard the boos. It would have been 0 for 6 in the red zone. And this is now the second or third straight week where this has been kind of a thing with the Seattle Seahawks, is finishing off drives. You, efficient or not, you're moving the ball down the field. How big of an issue, Chris Crawford, is the Seahawks red zone offense in not getting touchdowns lately?
I don't think it's as huge of an issue right now, but that's somewhat based on what they're playing. If this is the offense we see in the postseason, and the Seahawks are going to the postseason, barring something unforeseeable, the Seahawks are going to play playoff games, then it becomes a huge deal, right? Because it's just the math of the thing, right? Like, if you score a touchdown, you give up 2 field goals, team with the touchdown, assuming they made their extra point, is winning, right? Field goals only get you so far. They're way better than scoring 0 points. There's another brilliant example of the public education that I've had. Absolutely. It's better to score points than not score points. But you have to put the biscuit in the basket in playoff games, and you have to put the biscuit in the basket against better teams. And let's be honest, the Seahawks today faced a team that has talented players, no doubt about it. But they also faced a guy at quarterback who was just dreadful today. And you know what? Max Brosmer might develop into a very nice backup quarterback, and I felt bad for him. There was no reason for him to be on the field. And I think John Wolford was their backup today. I'm surprised that John Wolford didn't end up seeing the field, because talk about like having to stay in and take the beating. Like, my goodness gracious, that was just so ugly to watch. But the Seattle offense benefited today from Max Brosmer and then some. You're not going to have Max Brosmers in the playoffs. You're not. You're going to face the Baker Mayfields. You're going to face the Matthew Staffords. You're going to face the Jordan Loves. All of those guys leaps and bounds better than Max Brosmer, at least at this stage of his career, and very likely any stage of Max Brosmer's career. They have to be able to finish off drives, and they have to be able to create that separation. There has to be a reason to not have brackets on Jackson Smith and Jigba when we get closer to the end zone. There has to be a reason to respect this running game a little bit more, and it's just not good enough when they get us, particularly inside of the 10-yard line. When it is goal to go, I just don't have a lot of confidence in this offense right now, and that's disappointing.
Yeah, Rob, is it play calling? Is it quarterback play? Because I think you can point to a lot of red zone issues to the quarterback with a lot of teams. So where do you put the issues with getting the ball into the pay dirt?
Well, for me, as a scout, I'm always going to look at the personnel first. I think that look, there's a lot more talented coaches out there. I think that any coach out there that is like a high school coach or beyond probably knows more X's and O's than I do. I will put my evaluation, against any general manager in the league, however. And so I don't know that Cooper Kupp is getting open anymore. I just not consistently. And so I think that that's some of it. And it breaks my heart to say that. Yeah, I just don't think that he has the juice to be able to consistently scare NFL cornerbacks. And so I think that that's part of it. I think that Nick Callerup is a nice story. But at the same time, I don't think that he is providing you consistent run blocking. He certainly was very effective on the Zach Charbonnet touchdown. I mean, he blocked his guy all full into the end zone. It was beautiful. He also got completely beaten on one of the sacks from Sam Darnold there. And there has been other times, especially in the red zone, where everything is so compressed, that I think when Seattle gets Eric Saubert back, that you will see the running game improve. I think it's going to allow A.J. Barner to be more effective as a red zone receiver. So I think that that's also a factor. Frankly, while I was very much, tossing flowers John Schneider's way when it comes to some of the moves he's made, Rashid Shaheed has not been as effective as a receiver. And you got to give Robert Turbin some credit. I mean, he said from the jump that this was more about special teams. He wasn't expecting much on offense. Well, he's getting what he expected because there hasn't been much of it on offense at all. I mean, there was, I think, one more catch today, another opportunity out of the backfield, but until the Sam Darnold, Rashid Shaheed truly trust each other, then he has not proven himself to be any type of a weapon in the red zone. And so I think that Seattle is really missing Torrey Horton's big play ability in the red zone. I mean, remember, he's got 5 receiving touchdowns so far this season. That's second in the NFL among rookies. And so, again, the fact that Seattle doesn't have Torrey Horton's speed, which we all think about it when they're out of the red zone, how he can stretch the defense. But including in the red zone, he's not only fast, he's so damn long, and he's incredibly quick as well. So he's a pretty effective receiver on a variety of routes. Rashid Shaheed, it feels like he's running a lot of the same type of routes over and over again. And Sam Darnold, for whatever reason, doesn't, it hasn't made that connection. And then again, at tight end, I think that that's some of it as well. And then, of course, there's some problems with Seattle's offensive line at times as well. And so I think that there's a multitude of factors here. And again, some of it could be the spacing that Chris mentioned before. I'm looking at the personnel, and that if I was to try to match up guys against Seattle's offense and the talent that they have, I do think if there are some chinks in the armor, so to speak, that you might be able to at least manage. And that to me is what it feels like, is Seattle's offense is good enough to march down the field, but once things get compressed, because they're not a dominant running game, and they certainly are not a dominant passing game, if you can bracket JSN, then you can slow Seattle's offense down. I do, however, think it's going to get better. Hopefully, knock on wood, that there's no other injuries, and you get a Torrey Horton back, you get an Eric Saubert back, and hopefully, something gets a little bit more consistent at the right guard position.
Yeah, I completely like all of that. Honestly, I think Rob does such a good job of kind of explaining things that normal fans don't think about when it comes to offense. Just like, oh, Sam Darnold sucking if they can't get in the end zone, or it's oh, play calling sucks. Like, get Clint Kubiak out of here. No, there's a lot more that goes into it, and I think you're completely right about Rashid Shaheed, because I think everyone expected that to be just a big play waiting to happen every single time. Yeah. And it hasn't come yet. And I know a lot of people pumped the brakes kind of as it happened, be like, look, he's coming mid-season. It's not something that he's just going to pick up right away. But I did expect there to be a little bit more involvement in the offense, whether that's just getting him some touches, throw a screen pass to him. I don't know, like just get him the ball and have him run in space. I don't know. So that's something that I think will hopefully develop as the season progresses. But it's going to be something, because that was the difference in the game against the LA Rams. You can look to Matthew Stafford's ability to not turn the ball over versus Sam Darnold's. And yeah, that obviously made a huge difference, but it was the fact that the Seattle Seahawks could not get touchdowns in the red zone was the biggest difference in that game. So, and we talked about that in our post-game show there. So that it's going to come up again. So we have to make sure if we want to be that Super Bowl contender that I think a lot of people think the Seahawks are, you got to get the ball in the red zone. It's so important now. That's why more and more teams are going for it more and more often. So, all right, I know I went a little long there. Let's come back really quick. Do some unsung hero / unsung villain if you guys got one. A little shout out to Mariners Postcast with myself and Chris Crawford. We do that every day after every Mariners game. So let's do it today for the Seahawks. Why not? Unsung hero, unsung villain. We'll be right back here on the Seahawks Squad Show after a Seahawks win. Welcome back. We're doing a post-game show version of the Seahawks Squad Show after a Seahawks 26-0 victory over the Minnesota Vikings to go to 9-3 on the season, tied for first in the NFC West. Let's do some unsung hero / villain. You know your sung heroes, your Ernest Jones and DeMarcus Lawrence as well. A couple big plays from those guys on the defensive side of the ball. You could throw in a Zach Charbonnet for a touchdown. But let's do some unsung hero. Guys you normally would not, whether it's a play, whether it's just an aspect of the game that kind of goes unsung a little bit. Chris Crawford, I'm curious where you're going to go with this one. Who's your unsung hero or villain, if you want to go?
I'm going to go unsung hero. And I know he did have one touchback, and I'm sorry for bringing up punters. Like, normally I don't like to. I thought Michael Dixon played a really good football game today. Yeah. And I think that he has, in a game like today, having someone like a Michael Dixon is so huge, to have that guy to make sure that, yeah, one of the punts goes into the end zone, but nothing gets returned. Nothing. You don't get that chance to, the only time that the Vikings had the short field was when the Seahawks turned the football over. And I thought actually the entire special teams unit played really well today. I was going to go with Michael Myers as a cheat as my special teams hero, combining the very
Michael
nice
Dixon,
game that Jason Myers and Michael Dixon played. But, Rashid Shaheed had 3 solid punt returns. So he did help in that facet, did help you gain some good field position. And then the coverage units were excellent again. So I'll go with Michael Dixon, but just a whole huge shout out to the whole special teams in this one.
All right, Rob, where are you going?
We talked about before that with Jackson Smith and Jigba, until Seattle gets a secondary target that really can make some big plays, that this could limit Seattle's offense. So one of the players that I thought made, arguably the most important catch in this entire game was Cody White. And it was only one catch, but that one catch went for, I think it was 22 yards, 23 yards. I mean, very close to the production that JSN had. And I thought if I remember this correctly, it was a 3rd down play. I know that he definitely broke through for a couple of tackles and kind of kept his legs churning. I thought that it was a big play in the game. And so we talked about, just about everybody else. And so I think that unsung hero might be, overstaying it slightly, but I did think it was a big play, and he plays hard, and I certainly want to credit him. I think on the flip side, as far as an unsung villain, or look, it's difficult to pick out any villain, especially one on defense, especially when I think it was as critical to Seattle's resurgent defense as we've seen is Nicky Manwari. However, I did not like the slam down of Justin Jefferson. As I mentioned before, that was one of the things I was worried is don't light a fire under their best player, and I thought that was a little bit bush league, a little bit just overzealous. I get it. He's a
especially
rookie.
in a blowout, right?
Yeah, and he's so damn strong. I mean, I get all of it. I just don't want to see it happen in the future. And so that's about as close as I can get to a villain in a game that Seattle basically dominated from start to finish.
Yeah, I'm going to go unsung hero. And I know it's tough to really pick an unsung hero from this defense. But when you have DeMarcus Lawrence doing what he does, Leonard Williams just continuously being one of the best defensive players in the NFL, it's weird that a first-round pick gets kind of overshadowed a little bit. But, man, Byron Murphy just continues to get better and better and better and better. And I realize he only had the 1 sack today. He has, I think, 6 on the season, if my stats. Looking at that correctly. So it's not like he's jumping off the page with his production, but man, I just think so much of what makes this defense so good is gap soundness, if that's a word, and just doing your job, I guess, more than anything else. And you don't have to be this guy that's this Micah Parsons that's going to, jump off the tape every single time you watch it. But Mike McDonald just wants guys that will do their job and just trust this scheme is going to shut guys down. And it feels like the person who embodies that more than anyone else, maybe Ernest Jones, but the guy who embodies it more than anyone else is Byron Murphy. Because if you were to look at his stats and be like, are you satisfied with what you're getting from 91 through his first year and a half now, I guess you could say, would you be satisfied with that after a first round pick spent on him? I think a lot of people would say, just looking at the stats, they'd say no. But I think more than anything else, if you're watching these games, you realize how much of an impact he has, especially in the running game. It's so fun to watch someone who is that kind of just, I don't want to say dominant, but it kind of feels like that's the right word to use when he's shedding blocks so quickly. He's just doing his job. I don't know. I'm not someone who can break down X's and O's. I'm not a guy that watched all 22 and just be like, oh, he did exactly what he needed to do there. But more than anything else, I just feel like that dude is doing exactly, what Mike McDonald is asking him to do.
And real quick on the Murphy point, the fact that he's stepped up so much with no Jordan Reed, like the fact that they haven't had him, his ability to both help in the run, which, even during his rookie year, I think it was underrated what he did there. But now you're seeing that pass rush. And by the way, it's 7 now. He had 6 coming into the day.
Oh,
now
okay. Gotcha.
7 sacks. That's a very solid total from your interior defensive lineman with still 5 games to go. Yeah, he has been awesome. I wanted to give a shout out to getting Myles Gaskin into this football game. We won't talk about Saturday, but it was cool as a fan of the Montlake crew to see kind of a local hero getting a chance to get to play in a football game. Because Rob, I think you have watched that guy play. He was so damn good in college and had some nice moments with the Dolphins as well. But just seeing kind of a little bit of a local hero get a chance to play in a football game like this was pretty neat. Hopefully George Holani can bounce back from his injury. I know they placed him on IR, but it was pretty neat to see Myles Gaskin play for the Seattle Seahawks, because that's something I've wanted to see since about 2017.
No, it very much was. And I was fortunate enough to go to that Rose Bowl, and Myles Gaskin's final game, and for the Huskies. And so, yes, that was kind of a heartwarming moment just to see him on the field. As you said, would love to get George Holani back out there. I mean, intrigued by what Cam Akers is going to provide Seattle as well. But to see Myles Gaskin out there on what could have been a very tough weekend for a lot of Dog fans was a nice way to kind of wrap the weekend up. Yeah,
O'Day to UW to the Seattle Seahawks. That's about as Seattle as it gets. That's pretty cool. He was in my high school class. I remember going to games. I went to Bishop Planchette, so we played against O'Day. I remember going to games and just being like, "Oh yeah, that's Myles Gaskin. He's going to run over everyone." So that's pretty cool to see someone have that journey a little bit. And I love that little shout out from Chris. All right, any last words from you guys before we get out of here? Seahawks win this one 26-0. Yes, the Seahawks do shut out the Minnesota Vikings. Go to 9-3 on the season, tied for first in the NFC West. Rams do have that tiebreaker based off of their win a couple weeks ago. But Chris, Rob, I'll leave you the floor. Anything else you want to mention? Chris first.
Just again, we talked about at the very beginning how massive it is that the Rams lost this football game. The fact that you were able to get, you now control your own destiny. You control your own destiny, and it's a chance to, don't want to look too far ahead, but the way the Colts look today, the way the Falcons look today, 49ers, that game's got even more added impressiveness or importance. Excuse me. It's going to be impressive if they get the win there, but it is great that the Seattle Seahawks control their own destiny with 5 games to go, a chance to not only win the division, but make sure every damn playoff game is played in Seattle, Washington as well.
December 18th.
Yeah. And
the Rams.
For Thursday Night Football, that's going to be a big one. Another big one's of course going to be Friday night at 7:00 at Husky Stadium. We mentioned Myles Gaskin, one time played at O'Day. There is no way that we are finishing today's show with just saying that school name too many times. So I'm going to throw this hat up back
there
on.
You go.
And just let you know that when it's all said and done, these are going to be the state champs in 3A.
Love it.
So, yep. So go
easily the 2 best teams in the state, but I'll be rooting for the Thunderbirds for you, my friend. Absolutely.
I appreciate
it.
Hey,
I went to Blanchette. O'Day is our rival. Let's go Thunderbirds. Yeah. Come on. Let's go. Chris Kidd, you didn't hear that. Ian Furness, you didn't hear that. Appreciate all you guys. Seahawks win this one, 9-3. Let's keep this rolling. Chris, Rob, you guys are the greatest. Go Hawks. We'll have another show with you or for you guys later this week. Seahawks Squad Show. Corbin and Rob will have more Locked On Seahawks content coming your way every single day as they always do. So look out for that. But until then, we'll talk to you guys later. Go Hawks.